Welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today, I'm privileged to have Director of Product Marketing, Tracy Montour, on the show. We talk about her LinkedIn show, Nailed It or Failed It, and how it helped her become a better marketing leader. Let's get into it. All right. So, to the discussion that we're going to get into today, I want to just kind of give a lead up before I introduce my guest. It's been my experience that the more you connect, or the more that I've connected and engaged on LinkedIn, the more genuinely nice people that I meet that are actively pursuing growth for their personal brand or their company brand. And what I've found is that these likes and shares and comments turn into conversations that actually ultimately turn into real conversations off the platform. And this is exactly what's happened with me and my guest today. I'm excited to have product marketing and strategy leader Tracy Montour on to share her story with the Exploring Growth audience. So welcome to the podcast, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. That was such a nice introduction.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm just trying to give my audience as much value as possible, and I got to grab their attention and let them know, like, hey, we're about to dive deep here, and it's very, very valuable information. So pay attention. For context, though, Tracy, would you please give our audience just a short introduction to who you are and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I'm Tracy Montour. Right now, I'm the Director of Product Marketing at HiredScore, which is a technology startup in the HR tech space, really specializing in AI and machine learning to help drive better hiring decisions. I have a lot of experience in different types of marketing, not only product marketing, but marketing leadership, marketing strategy, and really everything. I just find marketing interesting. So I like to dive in and get experience in different aspects of it, different stage companies and different types of industries. So I connected with Lee on LinkedIn when I hosted my own podcast in the past. And I've just been on LinkedIn. I'm trying to learn and grow from others and get different perspectives and input. So I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. And it really comes through too. It shows that you have a love for marketing, and I think that's sort of what drew me to your content on LinkedIn too, because I love connecting with people that actually love the craft. It's not just a job for them. So to kind of set the premise for this discussion, was it back in 2020 that you started your show?
Yeah. So it was like as soon as the pandemic hit, I was feeling kind of like stuck and isolated, I'm sure like everyone else in the world. And I just decided like, I'm not really getting out there meeting anybody new or hearing any new ideas. And the content that I was seeing on LinkedIn was kind of like, sometimes LinkedIn can be like an echo chamber. It's like you keep seeing the same topics
Right.
over and over again, just repeated. So I was like, I want to get out there and just learn about different people, maybe people who don't speak as much on LinkedIn and maybe are more listeners. I want to hear from them. So I just decided to go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So you started what we're talking about here is sort of a podcast or a LinkedIn show. It was specifically for LinkedIn called Nailed It, Failed It, Nailed It or Failed It. And from my perspective, the way I looked at it was like you're bringing on various professionals, asking about one success, one failure that they had. And I thought that was really cool because, and it's kind of like sort of similar to the approach I'm taking with mine that, like you said, I want to bring on people that are sort of, behind the curtain and aren't naturally going to put themselves out there. But once they do, they kind of see the value to doing that. So when you launched it, I was honored to be on the show, and I thought it was a great effort to connect and learn from other people. And by the way, I'll put a link to one of those episodes that from your initial maybe season, or what, I'm not sure if you call it season one, back down in the description. So if people want that as a point of reference, because I know you're starting again. But since we haven't talked at length about what the show did for you, and basically that's the reason I wanted to have you on. I just bring you on. And let's talk more in depth about like, why did you start it? What did it take to produce it each week? That kind of thing. I think marketing leaders and CEOs can learn why they should be active on LinkedIn and how a show concept like yours can create growth for them personally and for their company. I mean, again, like I don't know. That's why I'm having you on. Like I want to hear the story, but I just have this sneaky suspicion that it did really, really good things for you. So let's jump into it.
Sure.
So before you launched the show, where were you in your career and your role? Like, what company were you working with, and what did that look like?
So during that time, I was director of marketing at a small startup here in Buffalo called Arbite. Created productivity solutions for financial services industry, mainly debt collection. And
Hmm.
when the pandemic hit, it's a great company, but I just was like everyone else in the world, analyzing like, what am I doing with my life? Am I really passionate about this? I loved my coworkers and my clients, but I was in a space where I just wanted to explore and see what other people were doing, and really reevaluate my priorities. And so, really, I got more active on LinkedIn. I mean, I was pretty active on LinkedIn already, maybe for a year or so, but just wanting to connect with people, which was super hard. Like I said, during the beginning of the pandemic, we were all at home. Really, nobody was going out doing anything. It wasn't safe to
Hmm.
do so. So, I thought connecting with people and having a reason to do so by talking about targeted topics and helping other people get access to that information would be helpful for me. It
Yeah.
wasn't even so much about building my brand rather than just me learning from people,
Yeah.
which I guess you can say is maybe part of my brand. As like much as I'm a marketer and I love building brands and creating like clarity for the
Hmm.
companies I work for, like I don't really care that much about my personal brand.
Yeah.
I'm more so just trying to grow and learn and connect with people that I think are smart and interesting.
Hmm.
Um, so really, that was just the thesis. Like, how can I meet people that I see on LinkedIn doing cool things, or that I think would be interesting to speak with? And how can I also share that knowledge with my network?
Definitely. And what's funny is just recently, after kind of looking back at your profile, I saw that you have your only thing that you have featured on your profile, because you can feature things on there. If you don't know, you can do that. Which I think was kind of interesting. You only have one thing there. I actually like that, right? Like, it's like, this is it. Like, this is what I want you to see. And it's your operating guide. Like, when people, were to work with you, or connect with you or communicate with you, it shows like your Enneagram and your Myers Briggs, I think, and a couple different things. And I love that, by the way. But I noticed on there that you were an introvert, right? What was an ISTJ?
I'm like an ISFJ, which is like
FJ.
the
Okay.
worst one.
Yeah. Well, depends on who you're talking to. I am an INFJ, so
Yeah.
I'm close. I have an extroverted side of me that I can bring out when needed, but I've definitely become more introverted over time. So I'm very much in my head, right? I mean, it's a good thing. That's why I'm a consultant, but it's also a bad thing because I ponder over things and overthink things. So
Mhm.
to that point, though, I think it's interesting that someone with your personality type, especially being introverted, would want to start a show on LinkedIn. You know, talk, walk me through that. Like, what was that thinking like? Because I have to imagine that emotionally, you're kind of like, oh, okay, am I really going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that sense of like imposter syndrome. Like, am I really
Hmm.
qualified to do this? But at the end of the day, kind of my thought process is like, who cares if nobody
Yeah.
watches it? Like, at least I get value out of it.
Right.
And if people do watch it and they don't like it, well, they'll forget about it and that's fine.
That's
Um,
right.
so me being an introvert, I would say like I mean, obviously, if you're an introvert, you have times where you can be extroverted, but then you need time to recover. I think it's easier for me to do virtual conversations and podcasts and things like that because I have a lot of time to prepare. I
Mm-hmm.
can adjust the information after and really just have a framework around the conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point.
so that's easy for me. And then I really just find it interesting to talk with people. So I, as much as it's kind of taxing, like sometimes before recording the podcast, I'm like, I really do not feel like doing this.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of push myself and get through it.
Yeah.
Um, and I really think like everybody has something valuable to say. Everyone has unique experiences.
Yeah.
So, um, if you're feeling like anybody watching this, if you're feeling like you're introverted and it's hard for you to communicate, it's all about
Mhm.
the preparation and figuring out what you want to say. And if you don't
Yeah.
want to say anything at all, just do what I did and interview other people.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, keep it simple. It's funny. I think that we all, as marketers, we're always trying to push content out there and get seen. For the brands we're growing, and so the 24-hour news cycle can be just a grind because you're always trying to stay in front of people. But in this way, it's almost like you find comfort in that 24-hour cycle because if it's bad or people don't want to see it, it's going to go away in pretty much 24 hours or 48 hours, and people are completely. It's like trying to be found on the second page of Google. So
Yeah,
there's a little bit of comfort, I think, there, and I think you're kind of making a case um, for introverts, and because I think I don't know, my original thinking was like there's this big social thing that's happening, and it's almost like this big social event you have to walk into, but being on LinkedIn, you control how much you engage, and if you're doing something like this, I mean, to your point, like it's one person that you're having a conversation with. It's not, part of a big group of people. So it's actually this kind of platform or concept plays to the introvert.
absolutely. Yeah, like you said, I when I'm walking to a conference or something, I love it because there's so many different people and you can
Mhm.
look around. But after a while, it's like overstimulating. There's too
Agreed.
many people. You're
Agreed.
tired. When you schedule a conversation or you have a podcast or you're just reaching out on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
connecting even like, on the spot, I think it's really nice to have that time in that space and even that boundary of like not being in the same place. So I think it is like kind of a unifier LinkedIn for extroverts and introverts alike. I'm sure the extroverts can't wait to get back and be in person.
Yeah. Right.
I can wait a
Right.
little longer.
Well, so for me, when I'm looking at launching this podcast and putting this out there, the way I'm thinking about it is there's a couple layers sort of strategically that I'm thinking about what this is going to do for me. And one is that it puts me in front of prospects, right? Because they get to see me demonstrate m- what I know about marketing, and get to know me before they really meet me or know me. But it also puts me in front of strategic partners that could refer me to people, influencers. And I think it also, there's an advantage to me, like you've been mentioning. I get to learn from other guests that come on. I'm
Mhm.
curious, when you started your show, like what was the thought process about what you wanted to see come out of it? Was it, I mean, did you have a singular thing, or were you just kind of like, no, I mean, I just want to meet people and network?
Yeah, I mean, for me, really, it was about networking.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, a lot of the people that I had on my podcast ended up getting good results from it without that being the intention. So I've
Yeah.
had a few consultants on my show that have had clients reach out to them, prospects reach out to them, and build relationships. So I think
That's
that's
great.
just a bonus for me to be able to help people.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of like how I build my brand, like I've always been kind of wary of this concept of a personal brand because like
Hmm.
I feel like I don't know, it's just an internal struggle I have. Like I don't want to like commodify myself
Hmm.
or like reduce like have any reductive statements about who I am. And I really think just having a podcast with the intention of learning does help support what my brand is and who I am as a person. Like I'm a very naturally curious person. I want to learn. I want to explore. I don't want to be the person talking all of the time. I
Right.
don't think I'm right. And also like the main thesis of the nailed it or failed it concept was to focus around we don't always learn from successes. We always learn from failures, and
Right.
leaders and people in the professional environments don't openly talk about their failures, and I think that's a problem.
Hmm.
And that we need to have more open dialogue around failures and normalizing those conversations and being willing to admit and share that. So that was really like my thought process of just getting those conversations out there. Of course, like it's nice to get exposure for who you are, in case there's any opportunities. But as a person who's not actively seeking a new job, like I think it's important to see how you can connect with people
Hmm.
that brings value to you without that maybe even needing to get new prospects or needing to look for a new role or anything. Like there's value you can get from connecting with
Hmm.
people, even if you want to keep everything in your life the same. So
Right.
yeah, that's really it.
Yeah, right. And I mean, you are a marketing professional, and so I don't want that to be missed either for any other marketing professionals that are listening to this. There's so many marketing people out there in so many industries at different levels, right? And if they're listening to this, I think what I'm hearing from you is that this is a great way, even just engaging with people on LinkedIn in their comment section. I've heard the term thrown around that comments are content, right? Which I believe,
Mhm.
like you're putting
Yeah.
out little posts in every little content comment you make. But going to the next level and saying, okay, well, what do you want to do with your career? Maybe you do want this to be a leverage point to help grow the brand of the company that you're at. And I've had Emily Brady on from Sweetfish, and we talked about employee evangelist programs where a lot of the employees get involved, and that's definitely something it could grow into, and that maybe you could lead, right? But maybe not. Maybe it's just an inflection point where you put yourself out there like you did, and
Mhm.
you build your network, a more robust networking. You learn along the way. Um, I think what's great about podcasts these days, and YouTube for that matter, is that it's sort of like continuing education post schooling.
Yeah.
Especially for marketers, you don't have a lot of postgraduate studies that you can do. It's not like we are getting recertified or something. I mean, there are
Yeah.
obviously marketing software automation platforms that do that kind of thing, but other than the technical side of it, you kind of have to go out there and form your own perspective on where things are at or where things are going. So these kind of shows are great for that.
Yeah. And I'll say that going into the second season or whatever we want to call it of
Mhm.
my podcast, I do have a more strategic goal. So,
Okay.
um, kind of all my efforts around posting on LinkedIn right now are trying to get people that want to engage with me because they align with my perspectives. And then ultimately, like when I'm hiring, as I'm hiring right now, like being easily able to attract people who want to work with me because
Yes.
they align with my perspectives
Right.
and my strategy of marketing and product marketing and even just business strategy. Like they are already on board with
Hmm.
my approach and they want to work with me because they like what I have to say as a leader and everything like that. So for me, since hiring's so hard right now, that's my long-term goal in terms of my personal brand or my LinkedIn content or the podcast is
Hmm.
just getting people to understand like what do I value? How do I function as a leader and a thought leader in this product marketing strategy industry?
That's
And
right.
what do they agree with me? And if so, like come work with me.
I think that's such a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up because, I've advised clients in the past that are of a certain size to create a podcast even internally for their culture. And what it does is it helps to build out the thinking internally because people can at their own time listen to the conversations that are happening about the company in a certain way. But on the
Mhm.
hiring side, to your point, if you bring someone in and they're in the later stages of hiring or even in the first stages, is giving them access to that podcast and letting them listen to 5-10 episodes and then say, what do you think? I mean, they're going to have a lot better perspective on the company culture and if
Yeah.
they fit, so it could be a really good, to like what you're doing is I think a great effort.
Yeah, and I think like when you're looking for a new role, especially now with the current job market, like
Hmm.
your manager, your direct manager, and the leadership of the company in general is such an important part of making that decision.
Hmm.
So anything like we as leaders can put out there to show like this is what we're about. These are our values. This is kind of what we find important.
Right.
Um, that I think that is really critical for helping people make the decision whether they want to work at your company or not. And the more context you can give them, the easier it is to make that decision just like in marketing with, lead generation. So, yeah.
Agreed. So we talked a lot about like the why of how you got into it and all of that. Let's talk about the how. So, when you actually started to create it and, put that first episode out there, what did it take to get started? And then what did it take to keep it going?
Yeah, so I made this kind of foolish decision, like, but without even thinking about any of the logistics. Like, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to do a daily podcast, which is like reasonable. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
sure.
But I made the decision. I posted it on LinkedIn, so there was no turning back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky enough where my husband is able to edit videos. He's a really talented
Okay.
musician, so he wrote me a little theme song. So I
Nice.
was really lucky to have that free resource. But of
Yeah.
course, there's always freelancers out there, or
Mm-hmm.
agencies, or all types of people who are willing to help if you don't have someone that lives in your house that's willing to do that, or if you can't do that yourself.
Yeah.
Really, the steps were I reached out to a bunch of people I thought were interesting and just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. Like, it's 10 minutes and under,
Mm-hmm.
just 3 questions. What's one success? What's one failure? And what's one tip you want to share
Mm-hmm.
with the rest of LinkedIn? To my surprise, people said yes pretty easily. So
Mm-hmm.
I just booked Zoom meetings, and
Yeah.
I recorded on Zoom, sent the files to my husband to edit, and then he included, like, trimmed them, put a bumper in with the theme song and
Mm-hmm.
music, made them look professional. And then I just posted on LinkedIn, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept it up. I think there was over 40 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it daily, Monday through Friday, daily,
Nice.
for over a month. And it was definitely a really big learning experience. Throughout the process, I had people reaching out to me asking, how did you make the videos look so professional? I can't take
Yeah.
any credit for that. But I think, what we did internally, the whole process from start to finish between me and my husband was I would say less than 30 minutes per episode.
Oh, wow. That's
Um,
great.
yeah, because I would record them. It would be like 15-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I would send the file to him, and then he would edit it right away. And we just had like a template of the video bumpers,
Yep.
how we would put the titles and
Mm-hmm.
credits, and then the end bumper. So it was really quick and efficient process. And yeah, I think if you work with an agency, like, they can definitely do something similar, or a freelancer.
So, how many episodes did you do in total?
I don't remember. I'm like really unorganized about this for some reason, but I think it was over 40.
Okay.
I had reset my computer, so I actually lost all the files.
Oh my gosh.
I have them on LinkedIn, which is good. I
Yeah.
can still access them,
Yeah.
but I will definitely be more organized going forward. For the next season, I already have like 20 guests confirmed or something
That's
like that.
awesome.
I filmed 4 interviews, so I definitely want to do it more long term this time around.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a learning experience. And that being said, like, if you're thinking about recording a podcast, you don't have to commit to it for like a year or 6 months. You can
That's
just
right.
do it 2 episodes if you want to.
That's
No
right.
one's going to remember that you didn't continue.
Yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario is either no one's going to watch it or listen to it, which is probably not going to happen if you have anything interesting to say, and then the other side would be that, people actually do watch it, and then they reach out to you and say, we need to see more, so then you have to get your stuff together to keep doing it.
Actually, that's what happened to me. I did want to continue doing it. I had started a new role, and like, onboarding a new job at a
Mm-hmm.
startup is very time intensive
Mm-hmm.
and mentally
Oh yeah.
exhausting
Oh yeah.
times. So I didn't have the capacity to do it, but people kept messaging me saying they really liked the series, and they were
Mm-hmm.
wondering if I was going to bring it back. And I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
now I have free time. So I can bring it back. I have the capacity and the willingness to do so. So even if you're not, like, I'm not a celebrity on LinkedIn, I'm not one of the top voices.
Not yet.
If
Not
you're
yet.
a normal person like me, people do want to still see your content, and they will miss it when it's gone if they
Yeah.
find value in it. So it's definitely interesting to see how, anybody can really have something that quote unquote goes viral on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn.
For sure. So what I think that people probably really want to know is what came of it, like what were the results, right? So did you, and I'm, maybe this is not the case, but did your new role kind of sort of come from the fact that you did all of this? Or like, what was the progression that you saw? Because I know you built your network, right? And you made a bunch of new connections and all that, but what really came of it from all that effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that I got out of it was that I was a lot smarter at the end of it than
Okay.
at the beginning.
Hmm.
So that's the number one thing for me. I learned
Definitely.
a lot. I connected with people. I actually just to see and like see the person on video that you see their little circle on LinkedIn of their picture
Hmm.
and get to know them a little bit more was really amazing.
Hmm.
And a lot of just side conversations and referrals and sharing ideas person within those personal contacts
Hmm.
came from it. And then I don't know if it like got me noticed for my new job that I'm in, but I did talk with my friend Tyler, who's on the hiring committee, and he was like, "Oh, I saw your video series when I was interviewing you, and I thought that was really cool." And like,
Yeah,
so I'm sure it definitely helped.
definitely.
Um, yeah, so I think it's just getting yourself out there more, helping people
Yeah,
learn who you are. If you have a goal for your podcast, I mean, definitely measure it. I'm probably coming off as like the worst marketer ever because I didn't. But my goal personally was to learn, and I did achieve that. And now I feel like I'm always connecting back with the people who are on my show.
for
If I
sure.
have a question, or if I know someone, if they're hiring and I can refer them, or if they know someone when I'm hiring
Hmm.
and they can connect, or if I have a challenge, like if I need help on pricing or
Hmm.
packaging or something like that, I can reach out to my network, which is excellent. Yeah, so I think it's all if you do have a going with a goal in mind, it's really important to measure that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, for this podcast, I was a little bit more loose about my goals, but I mean, it's all about brand awareness as well. So I plan to be more transparent with the views and engagements on the next round of the podcast so I
Yeah,
can help people understand that. But I mean, I had the expectation of like 10 people would watch it. I got thousands of views,
that's
sometimes
awesome.
8,000 views on some of the videos. So yeah.
That's awesome. So as you plan for this coming season that you're recording now, are you can you share like kind of how you're thinking about it from a tracking measuring standpoint? Are there certain tools you're using or how are you approaching that? And do you have any other like new systems that you're putting in place?
I don't have any new systems. I really like to keep it like authentic and just easy.
Yeah.
There are platforms out there where you can have a higher production value.
Hmm.
That's I don't know. It's not important to me in terms of my personal
Yeah.
brand. I'm sure it's very important to others. So I just keep it easy as possible. And I tell people when they come on my show, like, don't worry about messing up or anything. Like, it's just LinkedIn. We can worry about that. And I've actually gotten feedback from my followers or people I've connected with that they really like that about me, that
Yeah.
I'm just kind of myself.
Hmm.
I've tried to be not myself and be more polished, and it never has worked for
Yeah.
me. So just kind of let it be. I am who I am.
Yeah.
But in terms of measurement, yes, I do want to be more structured because if I'm investing my limited personal time in something, I want to make sure that I'm getting something out of it and
Right.
supporting my long term goals. So I will be utilizing. I think just like the LinkedIn insights. I'm not doing like any lead tracking or anything like that.
Okay.
So there's no really like attribution tracking or anything, but
Okay.
just like how many views am I getting? How many engagements am I getting? Who's, looking at my
Hmm.
content? Am I reaching, new audiences, or is it always the same people who are commenting on my posts?
Hmm.
Am I reaching the right types of audiences? So like I'm in product marketing right now, maybe I want to focus some more of my content around marketing, product marketing to get that audience in for when
Yeah.
I do have roles open. So I think it'll be like an iteration process as my goals change and things like that. But I think that's another great point is like, don't be tied to one goal that you
Hmm.
set out with. Like if you set out for, oh, I just want to connect with people and you're finding you're getting leads
Hmm.
from your podcast or your content, like change your goals, change your strategy, change your measurement,
Yeah.
and try to do what is on the next horizon, what's your North Star right now, and you can always feel free to change.
I like that a lot. And we've talked about a lot about LinkedIn, like primarily because that's where your show was. But I also think if people are listening to this, their audience, if they're thinking about doing this for their company or for their personal brand, may not be
Mhm.
LinkedIn specific, right? So just to have it be said, more overtly, I think that this type of concept can play on any platform. If you're on
Yeah.
Facebook or on Instagram, and even on email, I think just having some kind of quasi consistent voice that you're putting out there, and getting feedback. That's the first step, I think, to really understanding where it's going to go. I love the idea of keeping it open, an open mind, getting started, because you don't feel it's easier to get out of the gate, right? Because you don't
Mm,
feel like, oh, if this doesn't happen, then it's going to be a complete failure, and then I'll end up on
yeah.
Tracy's show, Nailed It and Failed It, and I've talked about my failure, and it's all going to go bad.
Yeah, I think having an open mind is really important. And exactly what you said, being consistent is important. I think that's the most important quality anyone can have
Yes.
in any facet of life, but especially in the professional world and building
Mm-hmm.
your brand. Um, really just trying and trying and trying and having those successes and failures, and really doing and focusing on what's important to you. I think it's really important in the workplace. Consistency and momentum are the words that I typically use the most when I'm looking uh, for the right person for my team, or when I think of what could be improved. It's always a lack of, like, when I do see failures in the workplace, like, it's either because there's a loss of momentum
Mm-hmm.
or a lack of consistency. So I think that those are two really good points.
Yeah, definitely. And just one other thing that comes to mind is this idea of inspiration. I think that we discount how inspiring we can be to other people, because we're
Yeah.
always looking up to people who are inspiring us, thinking, who could we inspire, right? And it may not be to the level that we get inspired. Maybe it's on a a diminished level, or different playing field, or we never know how people are coming to our content, or even like offline, coming to the conversations we have with people. We don't know where they are and what could influence them. So I
Absolutely.
think that there probably were a lot of people who were inspired by what you did, and even if they didn't start a LinkedIn show, maybe they took a step in their life, in work or
Yeah.
outside of work, because they saw what you did and said, hey, I can do something like that too, and I've been thinking about doing this thing for so long, and now I'm going to actually do it.
Yeah, and exactly to that point, there have been people that have reached out to me, whether for feedback on their career or they
Mm-hmm.
need to understand how to make a podcast or things like that. I always talk with them no matter what,
Yeah.
like, especially with someone young in their career, or even
Mm-hmm.
friends who are having a career transition. And I would just say, if you're out there on LinkedIn, you definitely are inspiring someone.
Mm-hmm.
There's people of all walks of life who are looking up to you, even if you're in an entry level role, like, that's a position they want,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you have a mindset that inspires them. Like, be sure to connect with people when they're open up to you about, like, wanting to learn from you. I think that's the most important thing, because I see a lot of people on LinkedIn that are talking, like, at LinkedIn, but I'm not sure if they're open to connecting on a personal level. And I think that's what it's all about, is, like, helping people grow and sharing knowledge and sharing opportunity. Because, like, I know, just based on my life experiences, I never thought I would be where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if I can help somebody else accelerate their career, or just understand, like, that you can change your career trajectory, or maybe there's something you never even considered, like, that, I'm more than happy to do that. And I think, like, that's for me the purpose of LinkedIn. So yeah, I just encourage you, like, always help when people ask you for help.
100%. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions I ask all my guests, and the first one is about resources. So, what resources do you go to? Books, podcasts, articles that you found helpful, for that you would recommend for marketing leaders and CEOs of small growing companies?
I would say, I mean, we're so lucky in the marketing industry that we
Mm-hmm.
have so many resources and books and podcasts. Um, I would definitely recommend for anyone who's in product marketing to get involved with the Product Marketing Alliance. I've taken several of their courses, amazing content out there,
Mm-hmm.
and community you can learn from. I find that sometimes the marketing content that's out there is kind of what I was saying earlier. It's like an echo chamber. It's just the same
Yeah.
ideas recycled. And so I like to get outside of sometimes the marketing content
Mm-hmm.
and look at more business strategy
Yep.
books. So I can recommend a few. I mean, the first of which I have right here, is Playing to Win. This is, like, my favorite book. Actually, I keep all my favorite books on my desk.
Oh,
So I
that's
have this
great.
here. And then I have this obviously awesome book, which is by April Dunford, which is around positioning and messaging, which
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of people have read that, which I think is super helpful. Additionally, I think it's important to not read business or marketing stuff solely. Like as a marketer, it's really important to be a story builder and a
Mm-hmm.
storyteller. So just reading fiction as well,
Mm-hmm.
and really identifying like what how to write, how to tell a story, how to connect, how to
Yes.
really dive deep into copywriting. Like if you like the way a writer writes, like
Yes.
study how they write, practice writing in their style and things like that. So I think it's important to kind of zoom out, and then you can be more effective in marketing or whatever you're doing, whether it's
I
marketing.
couldn't agree more. That is 100%. And I think it's so important, that last point about copywriting, because that's a really big piece, sort of the pointy end of the spear when it comes to marketing. And I've noticed that personally too when reading all kinds of things. But when and I would even say even outside of reading or listening, but like, going to art shows, or things that are, you're taking in the world, and you're sort of filtering it through the lens of a marketer,
Mhm.
yourself, the marketer. And when I do that, I find so many unique ways to approach marketing and approach copywriting, approach video creation, and all the things that we're doing in a strategy. And
Mhm.
I don't really have anything off the top of my head. I wish I could draw on that, but I want to really emphasize what you're saying, because I know for personal experience, when I'm making myself aware that I'm taking in these things from the world, and I'm looking at them through the lens of a marketer, they really do impact how I approach things. And I think the only thing I could think of off the top of my head would be like an email, right? So if you're sending a nurture email to a warm list, and obviously subject line, but when you start that email, if it's really heavy story driven, and it is impactful in a way that you were impacted when you read, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but
Yeah.
if it's impactful, and it will grab people's attention in a way that they're not used to seeing on email. And if you can tie that to the purpose of and the value you're bringing in the body of that email, you're now at a different level when it comes to marketing, right? So I love that fact that you're bringing all these different things into your life, and not being in that in that echo chamber of marketing
Yeah.
speak or marketing terms.
Yeah. And I think, not to get too philosophical, but like when you, like you said, whether you go to an art gallery or listen to
Mhm.
music or you're watching a movie, it's like the point of all of those channels is to tell a story and connect with you as
Yeah.
an audience. And that's the exact same thing, not just in marketing, but as a business.
Hmm.
Like we're trying to solve pain points and challenges. And it is a lot more emotional
Hmm.
than you think, especially when you're in B2B.
Hmm.
Like I think it's changing, but people used to have this perception that it was a little bit more sterile. It's a very emotional decision.
Hmm.
People are emotional about their work. It frustrates them. They spend most of their time thinking about
Hmm.
it. And I think it's just connecting all of that. And
Yeah.
this is why I love to say, and maybe I know what your next question is, but like, that, when people say, "Oh, it's just
Yeah.
marketing," I really think that's detrimental to the
Yeah.
business and, of course, like marketing success overall. But marketing is an extension of every other part of your company, your product, your brand, your customer
Hmm.
success. It all connects together, and marketing has to be a reflection of that. And if you're reducing something to just marketing, you're really reducing everything we just talked about, which is that emotional part, connecting to the customer and
That's
really
right.
having a focus. So, yeah.
It's like a mini masterclass on how to do great marketing in 2022. This is where we're at right now in this moment, because I'm thinking about this as, how you do great marketing is through being human and being authentic to your brand or to your story, your narrative. And I think how you actually do that is by communicating, translating how something has actually impacted you. So if you're standing in front of a piece of art, work at a gallery, or if you're reading something that's been really well written, that's
Mhm.
fiction, whatever it may be, and you're taking that in personally and it's impacting you in a certain way, translating that feeling, translating those ideas in a different context is great marketing. I
Mhm.
think that's where we're at. And I think that's what you're saying is you're taking all of this stuff in and you're thinking about it. You're well, to the processing side of the Myers Briggs. Back to that, like we're processing all of this and how it affects us, and then we're releasing it to the world in a different context, in the context of a
Mhm.
product is part of a brand, But there are
Mhm.
people behind the product. There are people behind the brand, and the way that they are being impacted. I think those are if we look at the marketing campaigns that really have impacted consumers, you think, oh wow, that like they really get me, right? It's because
Yeah.
I think there was a marketer or maybe two, or maybe their creative person or two on the team that were allowed to really translate and communicate how they were impacted personally in a certain way, right? And
Mhm.
even more so, I'd say if they were impacted in the right context and it just made sense, they could translate it directly through to the consumer, and the consumer is like, yeah, I feel that exact same thing. That's where I think great marketing um, comes from. It comes from a human being impacted and then translating that. So I
Mhm.
love that. I love that advice of getting outside of your world, your echo chamber, and the current voices, and being impacted by what's out there in the
Mhm.
world around us.
Yep.
And then the last question is, if you could wave a wand, I know you were kind of alluding to this earlier, and change the mind of a CEO. How would you change their thinking?
Yeah, so I've been lucky to work with great CEOs who understand marketing and find value in it. I know there are a lot of CEOs out there that misunderstand marketing or kind of reduce it to just perhaps lead generation or revenue impact,
Mm-hmm.
pipeline impact. I think it's about zooming out and understanding the message that you want to convey in the market and the importance of that across all of the business, and really seeing marketing as a strategic role and not just kind of the mouth of the company.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
Let's charge forward with that. Changing the minds of CEOs and marketers everywhere.
Yes.
Tracy, thanks so much for being on. I very much enjoyed this conversation, as I knew I would, and I'm really excited for you and your show starting back up again. If people want to reach out and watch the show or get connected with you personally, how can they do that?
Just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Tracy Montour. Or reach out to me at tracymontour@gmail.com. If you have any questions or if you just want to talk, I am always here.
It's awesome. Thanks, Tracy. Enjoyed it, and hey, be well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I really appreciate you tuning into this episode of Exploring Growth. I'm trying to get this in the hands of as many growing businesses as possible so they can take this practical wisdom and deploy it in their companies or with their teams. If you're getting some value out of this show and know someone who should listen as well, would you consider sharing it with them or leave a positive review on the platform in which you're listening or watching? YouTube audience, leave a comment below with something you liked or your perspective on what we discussed. Um, I'm grateful for everyone that tunes in every week. Let's keep exploring.